School subjects. A lot of these are notorious for why school sucks, and some are why school was even bearable. Since graduation for me is coming up, I might as well just rate these because why not? Keep in mind, this will be purely based off of my personal experience with these subjects, so don't be going off in the comments saying, "Newsflash, your opinion doesn't matter," if I don't like your favorite subject and vice versa. Anyway, starting off, English. This subject was very hard and just very boring. And no, I'm not a foreign exchange student or have a speech impediment, but because I fucking hate literature. I swear, the only time this shit was even remotely useful was when they was teaching me pronunciations in the first grade. Now they try and teach us how the fuck to write a poem or what connotations are. Like, bro, no one even gives a shit. And if you ain't gonna be a poet, what's even the point? It's not like you have to recite 5 Shakespeare poems to be hired for a 9 to 5. -5 out of 10. Reading. There was a couple years where we just read shit, but I only find that shit interesting to a certain extent. And bro, I don't know how they could find anything less interesting. I ain't into novels, and all that was read was fucking novels. We read books like Wonder, There, and Their Eyes Were Watching God. Oh yeah, and we did read 1984, which was actually pretty good, but other than that, the rest were boring ass novels. -5 out of 10. Spanish. I haven't had a class like this since elementary school, so I can't remember every little detail about it, but what I do remember is that they weren't really teaching us shit. In fact, they was only teaching us the same shit every fucking time. In 5 years of elementary, we was only taught like 3 Spanish sentences and 1 to 10 in Spanish. When it come to being at least somewhat useful, that's all that was taught. Okay, I guess we kinda did learn about Spanish culture too, I guess? But teaching us common words in Spanish was the least they could have done. 3 out of 10. Math. Elementary school math was hard at first, especially with multiplication and division, but overall though, it was pretty easy, even for an elementary schooler. But damn, those papers where you were given like 2 minutes to answer 30 questions was fucking insanity. Everyone in class be competing to correctly answer the most questions out of anyone else in the class. And unlike the 2 other forms of math that are coming up after this is actually useful, so I'll give this an 8 out of 10. Geometry. I ain't gonna lie, this was hell. The squares and rectangles were alright until you got to the parallelograms, spheres, cones, or fucking Pythagorean theorem. And this shit wasn't as simple as measuring a perimeter of shapes. Nah, that's not how it works up in high school. God forbid anything is simple. Instead of teaching you how to measure square feet, you gotta learn how the fuck you find an exact size of a shape by using letters. And then answer with letters. Or some random shit like that. It's honestly a miracle I passed that shit. Also, I still don't know how the fuck I measure square feet. How the fuck do you measure square feet? 0 out of 10. Algebra. Algebra is even worse than geometry. Sophomore me couldn't comprehend how it could get more difficult than geometry, but damn was I wrong. I'm sure y'all know how difficult algebra is, so I'm not going to go too in-depth on the kind of questions and problems you get in algebra. And not to mention that it was so forgettable too. Like, I'd know how to solve some types of complex algebra problems because I'd be taught it during the week, and then I would forget all about it after a weekend. That's how irrelevant and unimportant this shit is. It's not like speed limits will say, parentheses x minus y to the power of 2 square rooted. I don't even know. We was taking notes, and I still forgot because my writing is just so god awful, and they don't teach anyone handwriting in school no more. Why they did it is beyond me, but what government does, like to give a shit, F 'em kids. -10 out of 10. World history. This shit was so fucking boring, arguably even more boring than English. I could care less about how ancient Asian, European, or African empires rose and fell. I mean, this shit was so bad that one time in 6th grade, for a trimester, I deadass got a 0% in that class. Thank God it only lasted until freshman year, as since then, we was learning about US history and civics. -9 out of 10. Civics and US history. This class is a lot better than world history because it was actually somewhat interesting. And even before I had this class, I already knew quite a lot about civics and American history, and even if you didn't, you gotta admit, United States lore is fucking clutch. Well, if you're an American for that matter. 9 out of 11. Science. Regular science wasn't too bad, and it was actually sometimes pretty interesting. There were times where you got to learn about astronomy, which I really fuck with that shit. Also, this shit was pretty easy, especially when I had this class in 6th grade and 8th grade. The teacher was pretty chill, and we would just simply do one of three things. We would either take notes on a TED Talk, take a quiz on a Bill Nye video, or do a brain pop. So yeah, it was pretty great considering the fact that I also got to sit with the gang after I finished my work. 7 out of 10. Biology. This was so boring, dude. I had to learn about plants, natural parks, and animals. And also, the teacher was literally the epitome of a bitch. I don't even exaggerate that. This shit would make plant and animal enthusiasts fucking vomit. Negative 9 out of 10. I'm not even going to go too much in depth into what happens in biology. Microbiology. God, I hated studying about fucking microbes. I had to spend the whole 7th grade doing this shit. It was boring as fuck, especially when we had to analyze shit we see in microscopes. Like, damn man, all I see is just lines, circles, and weird shapes. You think I'm gonna know what the name of each bacteria I saw was? And once again, the teacher was horrible. She would yell way too much. If a student even whispers, she would just go off and spend the next few minutes literally yelling and ranting about how loud we were. Okay, hypocrite. All in all, she was basically one of the teachers who would always say, "Never in my 20 years of teaching had I ever dealt with such behavior." Negative 11 out of 10. Environmental science. Despite me having this class for one semester, it was actually quite enjoyable. The teacher actually made things interesting, even if it was about population density or the barks of trees. And she also helped me out a lot, so 7 out of 10. Newspaper. Another class I had for a semester, and once again, it wasn't too hard. We would just look at big news that was going on in the world, and then of course, quizzed on it. Sometimes we would read Scholastic News, which I'm sure a lot of you will get nostalgic over that. And sometimes we would try to do a school newspaper, but considering this was middle school and nothing really interesting happened in this particular school, it never really took off. 6 out of 10. Music. This was another class that I haven't had since elementary, and all we did in there was just occasionally play instruments, and most of the time we would just dance to this guy or just sing along to stuff. But there is just one thing that made this class almost unbearable, and that was the fucking teacher. I don't know what she had against me. I mean, she was nice to like every other student except for me. She just made shit hard on me for no reason, and God, she was just a bitch to me for like no reason. Thanks to her, I probably won't get in the music scene anytime soon. At least when it comes to playing instruments. Negative 10 out of 10. PE. Bro, PE was ass when I had that shit. All we was doing was walking around in a rather small gym, and we were simply given a small exercise circuit, which even for a middle schooler who was not physically active back then, wasn't worth shit. You ever go to the gym and see one of those exercise or Zumba classes with all the old people? Yeah, it was something like that. It was pure ass, and once again, boring. Perhaps it just simply varies from school to school, as I've seen middle schools with whole-ass powerlifting gyms, and then you got schools like mine with random retarded exercise circuits. The only good thing that came from PE was I got to hang out and shoot hoops with the gang. 3 out of 10. Chemistry. Now this was the shit. Definitely not the easiest class, but I got the same teacher I had in environmental science, so once again, she made things interesting. And getting to do science experiments with the gang was clutch as fuck. It'd be like Breaking Bad up in this bitch. 10 out of 10. Culinary. So basically, my school don't have a kitchen for this shit, because I go to like the worst school in my area, so God forbid you have shit here. Anyways, without a kitchen, we had to study FDA food regulations and shit like that. And then we were, of course, quizzed online about it. Without exaggeration, this was boring as shit. And I'll admit, I couldn't have gone through this without Brainly. Shout out to Brainly. Negative 2 out of 10. Oceanography. It was honestly lit. I don't even find that shit interesting, and yet I still enjoyed it. Pretty much because of how easy the shit was, and the teacher could not have been better. In fact, close to the end of my junior year, we took a field trip to a massive aquarium, which for a junior, even having a field trip is a blessing. If you were my oceanography teacher and you somehow stumbled upon this video, you know who you are, and you're a legend. 11 out of 10. And finally, personal finance. This one is actually an important subject that everyone needs to know about, though from my experience, it's not really teaching me nothing. Because all we did is simply a Dave Ramsey course, which I get it, you know, he teaches you about money and budgeting and all that stuff, but it's just a lot of common sense stuff that I think everyone would already know. And half the time, he's just yapping about how credit is the devil. He could be using up that time to teach us some more useful shit about money, or maybe how to do taxes. 5 out of 10. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, consider liking and maybe subscribing. And yeah, peace.